So we have a word problem here, and this is the topic, something like solving a word problem with a quadratic equation with rational roots. But most of them have to do with the area of a rectangle, and then you're supposed to find the dimensions, and they tell you something about how the length and width are related. So in this one, we have the area is 35 square yards, and keep in mind that we know that the area of a rectangle is the length times the width. And then we know, or they tell us the length of the rectangle is 3 yards more than double the width. Find the dimensions of the rectangle. So we need to find both the width and the length. So if the length is 3 more than double the width, if we let the width be just W or X, whatever you're comfortable with, then that would make the length, instead of using an L, we want to keep using the same variable, and so we want to write the length in terms of W. So 3 more than double the width. So double the width would be 2W, and then we need to add 3. And that than sort of switches the order around. Now when it's addition, though, like we have here, the order doesn't matter. You could do 3 plus 2W and it's fine. But there are some practice problems where it says something like 3 less than double the width. If it said less than, the order does make a difference. You want to make sure you have the W term first. So if it said less than, it would be, just by the way, 3 less than double the width, 2W minus 3. So that's often a problem right there, is that students will have that reversed and they'll get something weird. So let me just cross that out because our problem says more than. So now that's kind of like the crux of the problem, because everything else is going to go sort of like clockwork from here. We're told the area is 35. We have an expression for our length, which is 2W plus 3. And then we're just using W for the width. So let's distribute this and clean it up and see what we've got. So we have 35 is equal to 2W squared plus 3W. So I'm going to subtract 35 from both sides because this is a quadratic equation. So it's a good idea to just have everything on one side to sort of see what you can do. Can you factor? Should you do quadratic formula, etc.? So subtracting 35 from both sides, I get 2W squared plus 3W minus 35. And so now I would look to see if there's any common factor that I could divide out to make these numbers a little bit smaller, but there's not. So either at this point I can factor, or I could use the quadratic formula. These numbers aren't too large. Some of these problems, the numbers are bigger, but these don't seem too bad to me, so I'm going to try to factor. So I need to multiply a times c. 2 times negative 5 is negative 70. And then I need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 70 and add to a positive 3. So they're really going to be two numbers that differ by 3, right? And the larger one is going to match the sign of the 3. So the larger one should be positive. And if you have absolutely no idea, just start at the beginning and like 70 times 1. And let's do 70 times negative 1. That adds up to 69. Clearly that's not right. So then, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. 2 and 35. So maybe then 35 times negative 2. Nope, that's not going to work. 3 doesn't go into 70. 4 does not go. 5 goes, and you might be using your calculator at this point. So I think it's 5 and 14. I'm going to switch this around. Negative 5 times 14. That adds up to 11. Or no, I'm crazy. 9. It adds up to 9. So that doesn't work. 6 won't go into 77. And, oh yeah, of course that's going to work. Negative 7 times 10. Those two numbers add up to 3, so negative 7 and 10 are the numbers we need to use to factor. And so I'm going to set up factoring by grouping. 2W squared just comes down, and then we'll have minus 7W plus 10W, and then the minus 35 just comes down. And now I'm going to factor by grouping, and I should be able to just group first two, second two. First two, there's not much. I can just factor out a w, and I'll have 2w minus 7. Second two, I need to do plus, and then let's see, it looks like 5. And I'll get my 2w minus 7 again, so that's good. So now the 2w minus 7 is going to be a common factor, and the w plus 5 would be my other factor. So I'm going to set each of those equal to 0 and solve. And I'll get two possible answers for w. So let me come over here. So it looks like I'll get 2w equals 7, and then w equals 7 over 2. And then this other guy, though, w equals negative 5, is not, that doesn't make sense, right? Because we look back at what we were doing, we're trying to find the width of a rectangle, so it shouldn't be negative. So then that means our width is 7 over 2, or 3.5. And we can find our length by plugging into this 2w plus 3 expression. So 2 times 7 over 2 plus 3. And the 2's cancel, we're left with 7 plus 3, which is 10. So it looks like we'd have a width of 7 halves, or 3.5 yards, and a length of 10 yards. And you can multiply these together and actually find the area and confirm that you get 35. By the way, the other way you could find your length is just by taking your area of 35 and dividing by the 7 halves. Just make sure you put it in parentheses if you use your calculator.